All right. We are on the line Birhu Inyan, right? The line that begins in Pinas Ketzenius, Shinasa Mokir Loilomis. So we have now concluded this Inyan that just a little lower. We have now concluded that the whole the tzimtzum, the halomes of Hashem Elokim are not halomes for the sake of halomes. The halomes in order to enable the inyan, the Oyer Havaya of Shem Havaya to come down into world, and then through the process of the tzimtzum rise up to the highest levels, and to rise up to the Shem Etzem of Shem Havaya. Just like a Talmid is given a limited hashpah from Rav, but not because he's limited in the hashpah, but because he's giving him the whole hashpah through this limited opening. But through this opening, the Talmid is able to reach to the whole Chochmah Zarav. Okay?
Another question. If Rav explains something to the student, he gives to him motion, and the student understands the nimshach of the motion, then the student don't need motion anymore. So it's easy for him. It's like don't need anymore. So what happened by the nimshach? We have Shem Havaya and Shem Elokim. When somebody gets Shem Havaya through the Shem Elokim, what does Shem Elokim mean for him? What's purpose of this Shem Elokim?
It is not possible for a Nivra to have the Gilui Shem Havaya itself. Excuse me. To explain to you the principle is like this. In order to understand anything, we have to form it in words. Anything that's formed in words is not the Oyer HaSeichel itself. It's became a mitzias that you can form in words. And the thing in this process of formulating, of getting the seichel through words, there are many, many madrigas. In general, there is the way it is in dibur, the way there is in machshava, and within machshava itself, there is also generally two madrigas. Dibur shel machshava and machshava shel machshava. And when you think of the seichel at the level of machshava shel machshava, which means you are focusing entirely on the sichli, not on the form, there you have already a sense of the etzem haseichel. But regardless, at whatever madrege of hasoga you have, even at the highest madreges, there is an aspect of oisius. Because without oisius, there is no way that the seichel hanefesh can connect to the guf. So the union of Shem Elikim, the union of the Hagbolas, of the pathway, the tzimtzum pathway, always has to be there. There is no comparison between the way it is in Machshava Sheb Machshava and the way it is in Dibur. But still, there is Oisius. There's a story that the Arizal was leaning over, was sitting on a couch. He was leaning over, and it looked like he was sleeping. I think there was an hour. He slept for an hour. And throughout this whole hour, as he was sleeping, the Talmidim observed him and they saw his face going up, contouring, like a person's thinking. Constantly, the whole time was active. After he woke up, so they realized something very great happened. So I don't remember if they asked him about it or volunteered. He said, "This which I learned in this hour can take me 70 years to transmit." It was learned on such a high Ruchnizik level that in this hour you learned what in order to transmit would take 70 years. So this is Shaloi Be'erech, right? An hour and 7 years. Nevertheless, it is still not Shaloi Be'erech, because it's an hour and 70 years. But even though, like you learned on a very high level, but there was still oisius there. If there were no oisius, then it would not be an hour or 70 years. It would be infinite. It could never be transmitted. Because it's completely without limit. You understand what I'm saying? So the answer to your question, what is the Shem Elikim? There is the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya that the tzaddikim gdolim, but the tzaddikim b'nei aliyah, their avodah is not in aliyah but in hamshach, which means that their whole avodah is not how to show that the world is a lukus and to be milet into lukus. That they're completely above world, totally. They don't need to know lukus through world. Their avodah is to be mamshich into the world. Their whole avodah is mamshich lukus into the world, which means how to translate this inyan eliki which they see in a worldly form. So then by that their own hasoga is completely beyond Shem Elikim. But if they did not have the Shem Elikim aspect, they would not be able to translate it into the world. You follow what I'm saying? So their Gili comes directly in such a Havaya. but they still need to see it in seichel in order to be able to transmit it.
We always need, when the neshama in the guf, it's always needed the Shem Elokim to reveal this Havaya.
To connect it, right? This is why it says that even at Tzadik Gomu, the Alter Rebbe says, also Yesh Mishoyev. So no matter how high, there's always the Shem Elokim. All right. To clearly explain this inyan, how it is that through avoida, and he said the Giyas Nefesh and Giyas Basar, you can reach to the Oyer Yisrael Shalom that is completely above world. Tzorich lahagdim tchilo inyan hanisyonis. In order to understand it, we have to first discuss what is the principle of nisyonis. Oh, Masha Kosuv. This is what it says in Posuk, Kimenase Havaya Lekeichem Eschem. That Havaya Lekeichem is Manasseh. He tests you. What is in you from Nisayan? Shemenase Meso Odom. They test the person in Yamoid ben Nisayan to see whether he will stand up to the Nisayan. It's a whole seder, Lamaila, to test the person whether he's going to be able to go through on Yisrael. The Tzorich Lahavi. We need really to understand Maho HaKavona HaElyena BeHaNisyanis. What is intended with Nisyanis? Why does the Rebbe want Nisyanis? Elsewhere it's explained. The whole tachlis, irid zanshom beguf, that the entire ultimate purpose of the neshama coming down to the guf, shehi irido gdoilo, which is in effect, in essence, a irido gdoilo, a very great descent for the neshama. What's so great about the descent? The Harei Koidem Negosu Beguv, since that before the Neshama came down to the Guv, Hoi Soi Medes Ba'olam Ho'elyein, the Neshama stood in the higher world. Begal Neden Atachtim, Oi Begal Neden Ho'elyein, could be in Gan Eden, could be in Atachtim, Gan Eden Ho'elyein. In either case, it's a much higher world. Kiodua me'inyan me'ayin bosa. As the Mishnah says, me'ayin bosa. And what is me'ayin bosa? Me'ayin bosa means that you come from ayin. You come from that which is above world. And there, the neshama was actually capable of comprehending elokus. This is a phenomenal concept that is masik elokus. Because normally, as the way Hasoga is recognized by us in our world, the process of hasoga is dependent on the principle of the thing having been made. Like, if you ask, what is a table? Say, I can massacre a table. What do you massacre about a table? The only way to be massing the table is there are different phases of it, different levels. Number one, you say, well, here's how a table is made. So you're talking about how the table came from not being into being. Already you're not talking about the essence. This is how we understand things. First you had plain wood and then came this. From this transition, you have a hasoga, how it's made. Then you talk about the table itself. So you say, look, a person is sitting and it's an empty space in front of him. So he doesn't have a place. He can't rest his book in front of him. He has to hold it in his hand. So you bring a table in front so he can put the book down. Again, you're talking about that something was missing and now it was filled. And you understand its value by the fact that it could not be and it is. Because it could be just plain space in front of you. And you say you fill this place with a table, so now we understand what a table is. But if we're talking about something that doesn't go through change, that doesn't fill, so to speak, an absence, we have no way to be massing it. Like I pointed out, that how do we massing? How do you grab a table? You go outside of the table, grab it by the edge. Because you're able to go outside of the table and approach it from the side, grab it by the edge, and you can be masked. But if you try to be masked, to grab the table right in the middle, where there are no edges, you can't pick it up. You have no access. Everything has to have,
So in our world, to understand something, you should not this is it and this is not.
You have to have a contrast. You have to have a contrast. It has to have an end and it has a beginning. And in order to have an end and a beginning, it has to be and not be at the same time. Elokus doesn't have that quality. Elokus is only be. There's no not be. How can we massacre Elokus? Obviously, the Hasod of the Neshama is of a different caliber completely. The Neshama is not masig through the Mitzias, which is be and not be. It is able to be masig the truth of Elokus by virtue of what it is, directly. It's almost like, say, the same thing, like if you can pick up the table from the top. You don't need a handle. You can relate to the truth of Elokus directly. And be masig it. Be masig, understand it. This is the madriga that the neshama was before he came down. It was completely beyond any worldly limits as we know them. He was able to be masig Elokus. It does not have Masog Elokus, means it doesn't have any parameters. It doesn't have any handles, any limit. You can't go outside of it to understand. That means the neshama was able to relate to the kus itself, the way it is in its own truth. And the kus to the neshama l'mayla was not an answer to a question; it was the reality itself.
So see, neshama kind of don't have a question. Everything she known, sees, so this is the kus. You don't see something else.
That's all, but he was able to masik the seed. Able to masik on the kus. I mean, this shows of the tremendous madrigas and refinement that the neshama was. A muscle for this. We were able to see all the things in the Kashmir world. Why were we able to see things? Why were we able to see this and this and that? Because we spoke all the time. Because it combines darkness with light. And because it has its limits. So that's how we see it. So we see all kinds of objects. Then there's another level of sight. If you look into space, in a very clear day, there are no clouds, no distortions. The sky is perfectly single entity, single color. You look into space. Do you see or you don't see? The answer is, of course, you see. But that level of sight is not a level of sight that you say, okay, tell me what you see. It's an experience. It's a different kind of sight.
Because they're not focused to everything.
There's nothing.
See general.
It's just the experience of pure sight. This is possible only in sight. No other sense has that. We discussed many times the special quality of sight. Sight corresponds to chokhmah shebenefesh. Look into pure space and you see, and you experience that sight. What it is, there's no what. What do you experience? The purity of this sight. I said this is sight is and it's corresponding to chokhmah shebenefesh. So in chokhmah, similarly, what we see in chokhmah is similarly pure. Nevertheless, it's still a mitzias. Like the reason we see it is because something is there. Except it's an infinite something, pure something. Like for instance, there's a difference for us when you're looking into space when it's dark, or you look into space when it's light. When it's dark, you say we don't see anything. When it's light, we say we see. What do you see? It's an experience of way of sight. Of the reality of the worldly presence of existence. In dark, same thing. You see the same thing, but you don't see.
Sogates mean you really catch it, grasp it.
That's right. That's right. This is what he says. Neshama was able to be masig Elokus.
So if in Elokus is no end, how she can master?
Well, this is what I gave you the motion from sight. How the Neshama is a masig, we cannot say. But just like Bayas, we see the contrast. We see the refinement of sight in comparison to touch. That you could see even if there's nothing to see. Similarly, the neshama, in Gan Eden is in a completely different level, and it's able to be masik, where from our perspective there's nothing to be masik. And of course.
How the person his experience, he know for sure that he sees something, he's ever sight or not. The same the Shom experience the Asoga from the Kuz.
And this Hasoga gives it pleasure. Just like we have pleasure by looking into space. There's no comparison between that oinig and that oinig. But it's a real experience. This was the madriga that the neshama was before it came down to Nirmas. Masegis asog elekis. Masegis elekis. The omdo bi'ahaba v'yira, and he was constantly in a state of ahava v'yira. In other words, the inyan of the hasoga lekis was not just an hasoga, but it permeated the whole meshis of the neshama. That it has actually ahava v'yira. It experienced elokus in ahava v'yira. Uvebechinas bitul be'elokus. He was in a state of bitul in elokus. Bitul be'elokus means it was united to elokus. It was completely null in its own consciousness, its own mitzias. And what was it conscious of elokus only? Bitul be'elokus. Or K'meisha Kosov, as the Pasuk says, Chai Havaya Asher Amadati Lefonah. Chai Havaya is an expression of a shvur. It says, I give a shvur. Before whom am I swearing? Havaya Asher Amadati Lefonah. Havaya, before whom I stood. This refers to when my neshama stood in front of Hashem. What is the expression, I stood? The Amidah L'maylo, where the principle, the whole idea, the expression of standing, the way standing applies, L'maylo, She'neshayach Shom Amidah V'yeshiva, where the whole concept of Amidah V'yeshiva does not exist. So what is the expression Amidah? It denotes Hu Bechinas Bit. The union of Amidah is denoting the union of Bit. That means that the neshama was bottled be'elokus. K'mashikosev v'makimach. Yord of B'seiser HaMadreges. And then the neshama descended through the various levels. Seiser HaMadreges, the various order of madreges. Ba'ilam hazeh, into ilam hazeh, shenisrach hakom meyoir havai, whereby he became distant from the oir havai. Sheino maseges elakus k'mei shahisigo lamaylo, where it no longer is able to be masig Elokus the way it understood it Lamayim. Kiharei, since that ha'oir ha'eliki, this godly light, k'moi shemeir ba'elam az hatachtenim, at the level when this godly light illuminates the lower worlds, hu betachlis hatzimtzum ha'hel. The oir eliki is in tremendous state of tzimtzum ha'hel. And not only a tremendous state of tzimtzum ha'elam, but betachlis at tzimtzum ha'elam. The tzimtzum ha'elam is extreme, the ultimate. Bechinas ha'ora de ha'ora chitzenis levat, which leaves only ha'ora chitzenis. This is how we discussed this principle before several times in this minor, that the inyan holokus cannot be made in the world. And we should understand it now clearly, because world, by definition, means something that's coming into being. Like we said before, a table, everything. What's present in the world? That which has a mitzvahs, and structured. Elokus is just the opposite of it. Therefore, the oir leki that comes down to shine into world is of a completely different level. It's oir mitzumtzum, so that the elokus aspect of it should not be felt. Because if the elokus aspect will be felt, then the worlds are no longer world. Let me explain this to you a little bit more. The order, the functioning order is, like we start from Machshava. I want to write something. I'll have an idea what I want to write. And I then formulate this message in my mind. Not only the message, but then afterwards I formulate how I want to present it. And I formulate it to great detail. I want to present it in this order, with these mashalim, with these expressions. Whatever it is, I formulate it in my mind. And after I formulate it to a great extent, then I first have to go and take a pen and a paper and write it. Which brings it down even further at the level where it breaks it down into little dots, letters and dashes. Now this writing in letters, this writing is not the real seichel. The writing are letters, words, sentences. They're not. These are forms. These are lines. The real seichel remains in the mind. If you should imagine for a moment a situation where the thought would automatically affect the paper. You don't have to go through the various steps, all the way to a pencil with the paper. If the thought should affect the paper, then you say, this paper is related directly to the seichel, to the truth. Like this, the paper is very different, distant from the seichel. It remains a piece of paper. Doesn't become seichel. But if the paper should be affected directly by the seichel, then it seems like the paper unites with the seichel. Then the paper ceases to be a davar gashmi. It reflects seichel. But obviously this is not possible in our world. And for good reason. Because if it were, there would be no world. Then it's godliness. World means that it's a mamash and it sees at the lowest level. And anything that you need to affect in the world, you have to go and do it directly. Like, I can't want that cup should move here. I have to move it. Even though, what moves the cup? My will. My hand doesn't act independently of my will. But my will has to translate at the level of moving the cup. And if it doesn't translate, it's never going to happen. Should it happen by virtue of my will, then you're breaking Gashmis, you're breaking the world away. It's no longer a world. Then that means that the cup is completely bottled to my mind. It's not a mitzvah by itself, it's not world. This is what it means over here, that the Oyer Eliki shines in the world, but it shines in the world in a very, very concealed way. This is like the cup gets moved. The real reason why the cup gets moved is because I want it to move. But that's not what you see. You see my hand moving it. That means that the Oyer Eliki that's contained in my will, in my nefesh, my chayas, is completely hidden. What comes out of it? A dover mitzuntzum. Move the cup. Command, so to speak. Something that can be transmitted to the hand. And as long as it is not transmittable to the hand, as long as it's still in a ruch niziki level, there's no way it's going to happen. Like we discussed, I remember a long time ago, that I'm looking at this cup and I think to myself, this cup should be here. It has nothing to do with the Gashmi. It's to do with how I feel about it. Aesthetically. You know what aesthetically means? Nothing to do with the cup. In order for the cup to move, I have to come down from should be here, I want to move it here. Which requires several levels of descent. Until it becomes not it should be here, but move it. So this is the pshat that the Eireliki there is Eirelikim in Be'erim Zachtein. Because ultimately, like I said in the Moshel, if I move the cup, it is an expression of how I think it should be. There is Eirelikim, but it's completely concealed. What you see is not what I think, and not the sense that it has to be, it should be, this is the right thing, but just that my hand moved. Okay? But translates in the world is Haora Chitzenis from the Eireliki. V'yad gamzois, and then even that Haora Chitzenis, the Haora Chitzenis itself, bo bivchinas hagshomo. It expresses itself, and it's recognized in a Hagshoma manner. It's with Hagshoma manner. Haino hasoga megushemes. It means a very tangible and low-level hasoga. A coarse hasoga. Not refined.
What does mean coarse?
Huh?
What does mean refined? What the difference between refined and coarse hasoga? So the nefesh understand how we understand in this world?
Well, the nefesh in this world also is able to understand the Lukus, but it's on a completely different level, both in terms of tzimtzum and hester, and then beyond that, it's megushim. What does megushim mean? Megushim means that the focus is how it affects you, rather than how the truth of it is. By the man he didn't complain about the man. And one of the things that they said was, that's a lechem kloikei, a light bread. A bread without substance, without coarseness. Like it says that the bread, the mon didn't have excess, did not have refuse. It was all absorbed in the body. It was all food. Didn't have anything that the body rejected. It was all ruhi, all feed for the body. And Eden complained about it. What was the complaint? The complaint was, yes, indeed, we eat and we are healthy, feel well, but I don't feel my full belly. I don't feel like the experience of eating. Why do you need the experience of eating? If you're going to be healthy. In Olam Hazeh, if you don't feel the experience of eating, you're missing that experience. Just like explained all the time about learning. That learning means to get to know. From not knowing into knowing. Just that then a thought should fly in. I know, without having to struggle and to work on it, is not called knowing. If something comes easy, you don't feel the experience of having learned anything. Even though you learned. Same thing is in food. That you have to have a feel that you have consumed something. Dashmi. Thus, to have the benefit without the consumption is not, and it's not a worldly, it's not a Gashmic experience. It's not satisfying to the Nefesh HaBahamis. He wants to feel, I ate something. I was hungry and I did something to take that hunger away. Then I feel good. Just that the hunger should dissipate, I don't feel comfortable with that. I have to know how it dissipates. That's a HaYom. So this is the way it is in hunger, in eating, and this is the way it is in Seichel as well. But in Seichel, in Olam Hazeh, in our world, you don't feel that you've learned anything unless you have to struggle. You have to make a form of it. That which we know because we just know, it's not called knowledge. This is the pshat, that even after there is hasoga, there is this aspect of hagshama. There has to be the experience of it. And without that experience, it's not a real hasoga. Like if you learn something and everything is smooth, you have no problems, you feel something missing, you don't feel that you grasp it. When you start asking kashas and you're finding answers, that's when you feel that I got it. Why the kashas? Because then it brings this out in a mugushindik level. I really appreciate, I really feel what I learned. I have the answer to your questions. Just the etzem meaning of that I learned this thing, I don't feel I learned anything. In Olam Hasa, you have to overcome some difficulty in order to feel that you got something. That's the Haksham. This is the way it is in Olam Hasa. It's not a question, not good. This is the way it is in Olam Hasa. This is how the level of our Hasoda here. There are high madrigas, but generally speaking, this is the way it is. There's a story of a chosid that was even coming to the Mitzvah Tzedek. And he said, Rebbe, what should I do that I don't want to learn? I don't feel like learning. Says Tzedek said to him, that's a problem. What should I do that I do want to learn?
Not because of concept of Kabbalah soul,
What's the mind of Kabbalah soil?
force.
You break something through. And that's how we accomplish anything in this world. And Hasoga itself, even understanding itself, it's a different experience. You have to experience the fact that I understand. Sometimes you learn something and you just read it pretty quickly and everything seems to jive. You say, something's too simple over here. What did I learn?
If it's too easy, so you didn't learn it.
Yeah.
You need it.
You didn't experience the learning.
So that you feel you didn't accomplish anything.
That's right. And it's not, we haven't really learned. Learning means go through the challenge. And this Hagshama, this is part of the principle of learning.
But why is Hagshama? The learning is to know something new. So why it's called Hagshama? You want to go out from your limits. You want to get something new information, grow. That's called Hagshama.
The Hagshama aspect of it is that you're breaking through. You have to have a grasp. What did I accomplish? What kashas did I answer? This is why in Nigla Torah, the whole Seder HaLimud is on that order, on that Seder of kashas. Kasha and tenets. The kasha makes the tenets clear. Otherwise, you don't really know what you want. In Pnimis HaTorah, there isn't that. But that's Pnimis HaTorah, it's a different kind of learning.
Because so Hagshama is mean because I have to grasp. I have a kashya, right? So it's limited. It's like illusion. It's not.
Not the seichel, not the pure seichel itself.
So since it's not seichel in the essence, it's like limited seichel. So before it's called Hagshama because it's not.
Not the limit is one thing, and the limit itself is coming in a Hagshama manner, in a tangible manner.
neshoma, she don't have this concept to grow, to like. She's
Lamaila?
Yeah.
No. No, it takes the pure in your Lakus itself. A Lakus.
So she didn't grow. She's know everything.
What? She's growing.
So if she's growing,
But she's growing but not. Give you an example. You go up a staircase. Every step is a challenge. Right? Every step is a challenge. You feel, I made a step, another step, another step. And I made 10 steps, oh, I reached this height. What if you have a ramp? It's a smooth sail. There isn't that sensation that you make a step, not as the next step. You're also rising. But there isn't that challenge aspect.
You're growing so slow, it's not challenging, it's like almost...
Smoothly, not slow, smoothly. When you're walking up the steps, you have to lift your foot, otherwise you're going to stumble on the step. You don't have to lift your foot. You just go. But you're rising. You can rise indefinitely.
Sometimes you have real kasha and no answer. And then you break your head, and then you get the answers. Like if you like much grow, you Neshama is not real kasha. Like I not understand really, but I'm gonna get soon. I see already the answer. It's no real jumping, no.
Yeah. Eine be'erach klal hasogas huruchnies ho'er ho'leki she'esigo be'elam ho'el. It's megusham, and it's totally incomparable to the hasoga of ho'er ho'leki. And it was masig in elam ho'el. Hasogas ruchnies ho'er ho'leki. We have to discuss this line in Mitzvah Shem. Okay, that's what we're up to. We'll discuss next time this line.